All right. Well, let's see if this is working. Is it gonna work? Uh-oh. I don't know. Okay. It says I'm live on YouTube. Let's refresh it. And refresh this one. All right. Looking good. Whatever. We'll figure it out. All right. What's good? My name is Brett. Again, Madhatter. This is the second stream that I'm going to be doing here at Dub Academy. I'm going to be doing this every Monday. I'm trying to get better about being consistent and all that. I'm here at Dub Academy where I teach Ableton, music theory, sound design, and all that. Okay. And be sure to drop a like, a follow. If y'all got any questions or whatever. We're just going to get to it, I guess. I'm going to check Facebook too really quick. Just to be sure. Just to be sure. And if y'all can, share this. Share the video. Oh, uh-oh, oh. Uh-oh. Get out of here, get out of here. Go away. We'll just share this one. Oh, man. Facebook says no. Is it streaming the dub? Come on. Nothing. Why is it doing that? That's weird. We'll check it again. Here in a little bit. Shout out Bang. Shameless plug. Source of a lot of inspiration. All right, so today we're going to be going over mixing and mastering. Generally, I think people get it confused. You got to like mix and master into the whole project. And really, I find that the more that you can separate each process is you tend to have a better chance of doing it much more clean, and probably have a better chance of getting it where you want it on the first try. But so, okay, so this is a stemmed out project of a song that I finished, right? And basically what I did was, actually, you know what? I'm just going to open up the project. Let's see. Workboard, board of work. So I stem my stuff out a little bit differently than most people. I like to just keep everything grouped according to like texture. So if it's like drums, I'll kind of separate it into kick, snare, and then just like cymbals and auxiliary stuff. And each one of those have their own stem. This is probably about to go away, but I'll separate even my basses even into separate stems because not all of your basses are going to be processed the same way. Every time is going to be a little bit different, but generally if you have a similar process for how you approach mixing and mastering, you'll start to figure out things that you can do like in the creative process that will make this part way easier. And that basically at the end of this video, I kind of want to just describe how easy it is to move from a project like this with MIDI, audio, automation, and all that. And like I said, this is why I group things, or bus, whatever you want to call it. Because I'll just go down the row here, solo, render, new one, solo, render, solo, render. And I've heard producers tell me that it's not like the best, it's not the best process, but I'm really tedious and I like to know exactly where things start and end as far as like, rendering stems or whatever. So I'll select the entire duration of the track from the very, very first beat all the way to where I want it to cut off. And having things grouped accordingly pretty much helps me go through and, I only have to have maybe, see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I'll split my bases up into a couple things and a couple others. But generally, I try to stick between 10 and like 16 to 17, like 17 max. I think that's a little much, but I'm still kind of figuring out my own ways in this process. So just imagine in your brain that I went through, soloed each one of these. I don't remember exactly how I did it, but I know or I guess I do. It's in this project. But so I think one thing that a lot of people don't realize is how you can move that stuff over from, say your Finder or the Explorer in Ableton into the project really easily. So this is kind of my buddy Britton actually taught me this like a year ago. I'm really surprised that honestly I didn't know it, but it was a game changer. It totally saved me a lot of time in the process. So say for like a mixing and master project, I'll start with this blank project, and then I know how many stems I have, right? So we'll just say 10 for now, right? So you can actually come over here, find your stems folder, find the song, whatever, and hold shift while you select, and it'll select this entire area right here, right? And you can click and drag it, but like you'll see, here, I'll pull it back so we can zoom out a little bit, and you'll see how all the tracks are trying to be put next to each other, and that's not exactly what we want. Obviously we want different tracks. So if you hold shift, selects all of them, do that, and then press command while you drag it over, and you'll see all of them drop down like this, all the way down. So no command, holding command. I'm not sure what it is on Windows. It's probably control. Don't quote me on that. I'm not sure. I haven't worked in Ableton on a Windows computer in a really long time. But this is a super good way to get all your stems will be the exact same length because of the duration or the parameter that you put in the creative project, right? So click and drag all these, and then I'll pretty much take all, like I know this song is at 150, so I'll type in the tempo, but then I'll come in here and I'll actually select all of these by holding shift, and I'll unwarp them, right? So basically what this does is it prevents, how like when you, I don't know why I'm asking, I'm not even talking to anyone, but basically when you move audio and you warp audio around, there's there's an effect that it gets, and it if you're familiar with Ableton, it gets that kind of robotic-y, kind of pixelated sound. It's called artifacting, and that's, like I said, that's what happens when you stretch audio, like in the Complex and Complex Pro. It gets all grainy and has that granular effect on it. That we don't want any of that. We want all these stems to sound exactly like they would without any processing, no master, and I'll go over how to prep all this a little bit later, but for now, I'm just kind of skipping through. So we've dragged all of them, we've unwarped, and then I'll go through each stem. You can see right here, 0, 0, 0, and then where it ends, excuse me. So I'll make sure, you want to make sure that each one of these start numbers is, all of them are at 0, because if this is moved up, you'll see it's like this, and if this isn't at 0, 0, 0, the samples could just misalign by one sample, or 10 samples, and get, I don't know, just not. This is just the way to make sure that all the samples are starting right where they're supposed to be, even though that they're unwarped, not warped to the grid or whatever. My colleague Zion, who works with me here at Dub, he was throwing some different ideas at me on how to get this, and we pretty much do the exact same thing, just a different way. I generally don't like to rewarp these. I want to leave as much of the clean, unwarped audio. I don't want any of that artifacting bleeding through, right? So we've got our tempo, everything's ready to go, unwarped through all the samples, right? And then that's when I'll start splitting everything up. So I'm gonna open up the actual project, the actual mixdown project, and kind of break that down a little bit, right? So as you can see, this is, I kind of just put this together a little bit before I started. And each group, right, is broken down into a single audio stem. So what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna listen to this. Oh, by the way, if y'all have questions or anything during this, just drop them in the comments. I'm gonna do my best to keep up with them. I'm gonna do my best to try to answer your questions if there's any, but just drop them in the comments and I'll try to keep up. Anyway, so this is a song I just finished called Bouncin', and I figured I would just do the mastering process on a live stream, just kind of quickly how to, try to explain my way, how I get here, right? So yeah, we'll just go ahead and listen to this really quick. And there's no master on it, and these aren't doing anything. They're, it's just a dry project, fully uncompressed. Whoa, what is that? Why is it doing that? That's weird. What the heck? Is Turbo Boost on? Yeah. I'm not really sure why it's doing that. I'm sorry.
Something like that. Yes.
Oh God, what is going on? Okay, let's try this again. No device. Aggregate device. Oh great. Oh goodness. Okay, that's better. Okay, it's still coming through. Sorry about that. All right, let's try this again.
This would be something like that. Yes, but where in the solar system could it have come from? I like it when they...
Right, so it sounds really quiet, really quiet right now. And like I said, we're not focused on sound design. We're not focused on writing the song. The song is written. The project is done. Right now, what we're focused on is getting the levels, getting it nice and loud, but without distorting it. You don't want to add too much, with EQ, or you don't want to over compress something. And just really take away from what the project is. So your goal is to basically get it sounding like this, just loud as fuck, as loud as you possibly can. Not possibly, but I mean, there's the loudness wars with dubstep and all that, always. But generally, I try to go for more dynamic mixes, which basically just means like here's, let's see, I'm sure there's a brick wall mix somewhere on SoundCloud I can find. We'll just go to a Zomboy track, right? Type in Zomboy and see what happens. And Zomboy, all of the big dubstep guys, they generally have these brick wall mixes. You see how it's just like all the way across. There's not a whole lot of dynamic between these. Again, it's all taste. People could say they do it one way, like it one way is the right way. It really doesn't matter. I prefer dynamic mixes over brick wall loudness mixes. Just, that's all it is. So, according to what you like, you can mix it differently. But for this, I'm going to be mixing it the way I like. So generally what I like to do first is I'll go through, and you can see all of these stems were once all the way out like this, right? Yeah, every single one of them all the way down. And so what I do is I go and find the silence right here, and I'll cut out as much of the silence between sounds as possible, right? So this is all running together the whole time, so we didn't really do much there. But the basses, right, if you look how I had the basses, there's all this dead space, all this silence in here. There's no reason to have that. It's extra data your computer's going to be processing. And these silent spots will actually pick up noise. Later on in the master, I'll kind of explain how that works. But you want as little of this silent part as possible. And so, yeah, again, like I go through and I pretty much just try to isolate as much of the silent or as much of the waveform as possible in each stem. You know what I mean? So the effects generally end up looking like this because they're just the entire time. But yeah, basses, chopped up basses, and especially like if I have spaced out kick drums or something like that, that's a good space to do it too. But aside from cutting out all that silence, the next thing you want to do is go look at your sub stem. And generally I like to process these together as one. So we'll call this kick sub, right? And so now our kick and our sub are pretty much being processed as one entity, which in most songs it sounds like one thing. Ooh, excuse me. It sounds like one thing anyways, but this is pretty much the process which makes them appear as one in the mixdown. You know, they're breathing off of each other. They're, you know, and this is where you're going to be able to point out weird little sidechain flaws. You know, if you have, say, let me see if I can find an example of what I'm talking about. But like, say for example, if you just have like a little part hanging over, like something like this, or, you know, these little tiny parts, generally you want to go for trying to cut those out. But this is the place where you're going to be able to see that really obviously. It's taking you away from the mix. It's taking you away from the whatchamacallit, it's taking you away from the creative side. Like I said, we're not writing the song anymore. The song's done, right? Now we're just focusing on making it slap. So and a lot of that for me is visual, you know, being able to see maybe where a sidechain, or like you see how this little poke right here, this little transient pops up out of nowhere, you know, just deleting the space before it and just putting a small fade on it is going to take care of that pop, right? So like, let's listen to this right here. Oh, hello. Oh, what happened? What's going on? Really? You saw that, right? Like it just stopped working. There. Wow. My computer's been extra fucky today, so I apologize for any weird stuff that might happen. So anyways, I was saying, just taking a little bit of that clip and rolling off, which allows kind of like a few microseconds of space for the beginning of this kick to really click, to really cut through. And I try not to cut off, like doing this right here. I really try to avoid that because Ableton automatically, if you zoom in all the way, Ableton automatically puts this fade in for you, right? So if you're deleting all the space right up to the sound, just make sure that you're pulling this back a little bit, but I just really think you can just avoid that by just leaving just a tiny bit of space before it that you can cut out, and you know, like this, right? So it has that room just before it, so you get the entire waveform of the kick, and not, you know, it's not cut off, or you know, and that stuff will make a huge difference in the mixdown because everything is magnified, everything is being compressed, pushed louder, or you know, being made heard in the mix, right? So let's listen to these two by themselves, or not. It's cool too. Why is it doing that? What the heck? I'm sorry, guys. I don't know why it's doing that. Oh my goodness, this is really annoying. Holy shit, dude! Really? All right. Well, Ableton doesn't deciding not to work, and so is my brain for some reason. This is why I was late coming on today. I really don't know what the heck's going on. Let's see if this is working in. Okay, so I can hear that. Aggregate device. Nothing. Cool. Well, see if that helps. Okay. Just bear with me, guys. I seriously, I don't know what the hell's going on. But all right, so let's listen to these together. Finally. Right, and so what I'm looking for here is consistent levels within the sub. So this track is not the best example. I'll pull up another track I'm mastering at the moment later on to kind of, or here maybe like 10 minutes or so to get this idea across. But for your drop, you want the sub to be consistent throughout the whole drop. You know what I mean? You don't want to, you know, and you'll be able to tell in the mixdown if, you know, there's just one spot where the sub didn't quite cut through, or there's one spot where, you know what I mean, it's louder. Like, say, for example, I know right here I'm using a different sub. Right, so you see, like, right here how all of this stuff, this waveform is much taller than all the rest of the stuff next to it, right? So we're kind of just gonna isolate those spots that are like that, and we're just gonna make them even with the rest of the mix, right? So we can, right, so that one we can move down just a hair. So right there, take that one down just a little bit, right? You just don't want anything peaking or sticking up over the top too much. A little bit's all right, but just know that anything more than a little bit is just going to be drastically over compensated. It's just, you're going to be able to hear it in the mix a lot more after all the compressors and mastering chain and stuff. So you want to get these levels rock solid before you start really pushing into any of the other process. This is normally, after cutting the silence, this is the first thing I do. I group the kick and the sub, and I come in and start, and I literally just go in and just turn it up, turn it down, you know. So that could probably save you a little bit of time when you're writing the song. It's just like, okay, well, I don't need to sit here and mix this song 100%. You know, do the best you can, but also know that if you're running into a wall or you're getting frustrated, just try to think if it's something that you can fix in the mixdown or something that you can, you know, do better. But just finish the song, you know, especially if you're already thinking about mixing it down and mastering it and stuff. You know, you want to try to keep this process in mind as you even just start the song. You know, that goes to grouping your tracks, you know, all your basses together, all your subs together. You know, that way you can export it in a smaller group of audio stems that you can mix without compromising the entire, you know, for one, your storage, but also the mix of the track. I feel like it's just so easy to totally ruin a mix if you're, you know, if you have 100 channels in your creative project and then you go over to your mixdown, you still have 100 channels. Like this is the point where you want to consolidate your stuff into a smaller, you know, more manageable size project, and only, you know, flatten it down to audio, or not flatten it, render it to audio. So I'm gonna keep pushing through here and just kind of, and by the way, I'm not looking at these numbers. I'm literally just looking at the height of the waveform here. And if you really struggle with that, something you can do is just the bottom line here. You can just line that up with the bottom as quick as you can, or as the best you can, you know, and it's really easy to tell what's standing up and what's not, because it's just kind of like a DJ waveform in Rekordbox maybe. So we're just gonna pull this down just a hair. That's fine. Right, so pull that one down just a hair. Cool. All right, so I did that one. And another thing is that I pretty much process my sub, my kick, all of it in mono. So in Ableton, you can just come over here, come to your utility, and bam, click mono. So everything's in mono. And then I'll do a similar thing with the snare, but I'll pretty much just keep, you can keep the low end mono right here. So I'll click bass mono on the utility tool. And then I'll actually go and put an EQ on it and see where it's hitting. So it's hitting Where is that? So kind of in the 200 to 250 range. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make everything below 400 hertz mono. And everything above is stereo, obviously. And then same thing, we just want to cut a little bit below kind of where the kick is hitting. So if we go over to the kick, put an EQ on it. And yeah, we could probably get away with doing a roll off here too. Oop. All right, gotta call Victor. All right, so sweet. So we want the snare and the kick and the snare to be separate, right? So it's kind of a call and answer machine, you know, just do, toot, do, toot. You know, you want to be able to tell a audible difference between you know, what's driving the beat. You know, if you can't tell the difference between your kick and your snare drum, for one, pick different samples, but also it could just be something as simple as you know, you're just not processing the snare drum like a snare drum. You're letting all the lows cut through, you're letting all the highs cut through, or you know, so just be mindful. You really don't need anything below 25 hertz, you know. And you know, for the basses and the subs, I'm gonna let this open up all the way, but for the kick, just rolling it off here at the bottom just tightens it up slightly enough to where it's noticeable in the mix, you know, after everything's done, mastered and processed and stuff. Okay, so we've cut out all the silence, we came through the sub, the snare, did all that, right? And so the next thing I'm looking at is how I'm going to be processing the parallel, right? So I have a parallel of API 2500 right here running in the A return, and then in the B return I have a Camel Crusher just adding some tube distortion. Probably push that a little bit more. And basically what parallel means, it's like running an effect at 50% dry wet and 50% dry wet, right? So you have half of one sound and half of the other sound coming in at equal volume, or you know, equal levels, right? So if you run something in parallel on a compressor, that means 50% of the signal is the compressed signal and 50% of the signal is the raw uncompressed signal, right? And so just if you think parallel, if somebody says put that in parallel, let's try this in parallel, just know that means 50% one thing and 50% another thing, right? So in this case, I'm doing it with a compressor. You may have heard parallel compression. It's awesome, great tool to use, especially in this process, working with like strictly only audio. I prefer to do it in this process, but there's times where I've done it in the actual creative project too. So when I say parallel, just know that means 50-50. So if I say parallel compression, that's half compressed, half uncompressed. Parallel distorted, half distorted, undistorted, right? So let's see here. All right, yeah, so when you look at your tracks, gonna open all these up. You see these little boxes, negative infinity, negative infinity, negative infinity. So those are the pretty much like volume faders for your returns. So right now there's nothing. Ooh. Right, there's nothing running in the parallels or in the return tracks, right? Right, so as I turn it up here, watch the B camel, this meter right here, okay? As I turn it up. And it totally changes the mix, like a lot. And this is really where you want to use your ears, because this is where people over compress, they over distort, they over OTT. I hear that way too much. Just producers throwing OTT on everything and just, you know, throwing a limiter after it, and it's just harsh, you know, not pleasant. not, you know what I mean? You want to try to polish these sounds. That's the point of this. You're not to just slam it into, high volume and then just shove it under a limiter. Like you're going to comb through all of the shit that you missed in the last project, going through audio instead of being distracted by all the automation and stuff. I think it's a great way to separate yourself from writing the song. So, with the parallel, with the returns and stuff, what I do is that I push anything that's like high frequency, say like 1,000 hertz and above. So like vocals, snare, anything you want to cut through the mix, like really cut through and be on top of the mix. It's generally going to be the higher mid-high to high range frequency stuff. So that's going to be the API. We're going to push all the high, mid-high to high stuff through this compressor, which the setting is actually slammed. It's pretty much just like a brick wall setting. So we have one, oh wait, I didn't load my thing. There we go. Right, so this is pretty much like a brick wall setting right here. And so if we're running that in parallel, we have one brick wall, sausage waveform in with a really dynamic, uncompressed waveform. And all you're really doing is just controlling that with a volume knob or a volume fader. It's really simple, but there's a way to use that not practically. I don't know if that's a word or not, but this is generally like just kind of more macro mixing than anything. I'm not really fine tuning a lot within the plugin. It's just simple brick wall distortion or brick wall compression, some distortion, and we're just mixing those signals into the uncompressed project, right? So I'm going to go through and just kind of start pushing up some of the levels of some things, and I'll probably just start with the sub, I guess. So sub, low end, real grimy, juicy low end. You want to push that through the distortion. You want that to be really fat. And same with the kick. So we can just go ahead and do this whole group, run it into the B, return, right? Now, mind you, if you turn it up here too, both this and this are going to be sending to the return here, right? Or if it was A, it would be going to the API. So if you push the distortion return here along with the distortion return on the group it's under, it's going to just start adding up really quick, and then you're going to wonder why your mix sounds like a fart, because you're over distorting or you're over compressing, right? So like I said, we want to treat this pretty much like the kick sub as one thing. I wish there was a way we could I guess we could just render these and make it one clip, but you still want these to be separate. All we're doing is just processing it as one, right? So I'm going to bump the distortion, or here, I'm just going to let it play. Right, so I'm just going to let it play for a little bit while the sub kicks in, and I'm just going to start adjusting.
I like it when they...
And just pay attention to how, when I turn these faders up and down, what's happening, what's moving forward in the mix, and whatnot. I'm not changing stereo imaging, nothing of that yet. This is all just compression, distortion, levels, gain staging, whatever you want to call it.
I like it when they...
Something like that.
I like it.
right. So, and I pretty much, that was really rough. I'm probably not gonna like mix this down here on the stream today, but I'm definitely gonna like, you know, take some other videos of some stuff maybe I do after the stream. So let me look here. All right, so bases are being pushed, and I'm gonna go through and individually kind of gauge these, and you know, these jumps and levels right here, like you're not gonna treat this like the sub. You know what I mean? It's okay if some of these in the basses or the auxiliary, or you know, it's just that sub, the kick, that low end, the heartbeat of the music. You want that consistent every time. You want every kick hitting as hard as it could kick, right? You want every snare popping through and cutting through every time in the mix. So, and like I said, it's this isn't drag and drop. You know what I mean? You're gonna have to mess around with this process quite a bit to it fits, but I'm just doing it quick because I do it a million times. I've done it a million times, and I generally know kind of how I mix in the project before this, what I need to do here. So let's go and actually, I guess I didn't finish that here. Let's put this here. You know what? Actually, yeah, damn it. Sorry. Close that. Keep deleting the audio, and like I said, this, you'll see why this makes a difference, because like all of this silence in these places where there's nothing happening, you know, after compression and oops, whatchamacallit, gosh, I cannot think of maximizing, limiting, you know, and all that, stereo imaging, the smallest things become very, very, very obvious. And so the mix becomes really sensitive once you kind of get to the end of this process. So you just got to be really good with your levels here. And that's kind of why I start with a lot of head. Like if you see I open up a new audio track or new MIDI track, it starts at -7 decibels, just because I know this is bass music. It's meant to be listened to as loud as possible, right? So I give myself the headroom to push because I know I'm just going to be going louder anyways. So, and that's the one thing I think I learned, you know, going to Texas State, was just like, give yourself headroom. Give yourself headroom, because you're always going to need to turn it up, or, you know, at some point you're going to have to turn everything up anyways, right? But if you're destroying your ears because, you know, you just want it to be loud, you want to hear what it sounds like when it's done, like, no, like, save your ears. And honestly, if you mix quieter at a quieter volume, you'll mix better. We used to do this thing in school at the sound recording program in Texas State, where we would check our mixes by turning the volume down almost all the way. I mean, to where you could barely hear it even on headphones. And the way we would judge it is by, you know, okay, it's almost completely quiet. And if you mix down your project really quietly like that, in this format, your mix will be really good. It's weird how it works, but you pretty much want your vocal, you know, hi-hat, cymbals, and the snare. Those are the things when it's almost dead silent. You want to hear those things first when you start turning it up. The last thing you're going to hear is the low end, because it's a, you know, much longer waveform and needs a lot more energy to do a full cycle of the wave. Whereas, you know, those high frequencies, those cut through our ears, are shaped to pick up those frequencies a lot easier. So if you're mixing quietly, you're gonna have better mixes. If you're just slamming your mixes and, you know, fucking up your eardrums and stuff, that's gonna start showing in your mix, and it's gonna sound like you mixed it with the headphones blasted, or, you know, you after a while you'll just be able to start, you'll be able to point out when people are over mixing something or over compressing something, because you've done it yourself and you know what it sounds like. And you know what it sounds like on your track and how it affects your stuff. So let's look at this. Cool. So I think the next thing is going through all these basses and stuff. Right, so like right there, that one sounded a little quiet, this guy. Right, so I'm gonna isolate this one. You can just press the number 0, zero something out, turn it back on, and it's a separate clip like that. You could hit Command J too, but if you hit Command J, it actually makes it a new file, takes up more space on your computer. So you could just double tap 0 and it'll just cut it. Or I believe it's is it K that does that? Command K? Oh no, not that one. I forgot which one, or is it E? Yeah, you could also hit Command E and do the same thing. So that one's a little quiet right there. So I'm gonna push that, and same thing, I'm not looking at any of this stuff. I'm looking at the actual height of these waveforms here, and I'm just trying to get them a little bit closer, and I'll match them, and it's usually probably gonna be too loud. Yeah, that's way too loud. So I'm gonna pull it back just because when it was here, it sounded really weak, you know, so, and it was too much at like 6 decibels. So let's like meet it in the middle at 3.5. Let's see if that works. In context with everything. Hello, there we go.
Something like that.
And same thing, I'm actually just going to go through and do a low roll off here. Let's cut that. Yeah, you see how this little audio is hanging over? That stuff really, really, really does add up. If this is happening in every sample and it's, you know, hanging over like this, it's gonna add up, and you'll start to hear. I even hear in like full mainstream radio songs like the click of a sub sample. You know, they just cut a sub sample off, and it's the low frequency, so you hear the, you know, like on radio songs. You know, so this is such an easy way to avoid it. Just use your fades and don't cut any audio out that you don't intend to cut out. You know, and that, again, you know what song you're writing. I'm not writing any shit for you. I'm not, you know, the relationship is with you and your project, you know, so don't just like compare yourself to everything else. Like just do it until you like how it sounds, and then reference professional material, reference other people or things that you like, and adjust from there. Don't just be like, oh, I got to do it like this because fucking Zomboy does it like this. Like, no, that's what works for Zomboy, you know, and everyone's different, but you know, it's the same game. I'm actually going to push this guy up just a hair. Right, so that one was pretty weak too. So let's actually go back. What did we turn this one up to? 3.44. So anytime we hear this little right there, we're just going to turn it up 3.44. So it matches the levels of the other. Ooh, did y'all hear my stomach? I'm hungry. Yeah. So honestly, let's look a little more visually here. And you know, it's not going to be perfect all the way through because this is such a snarly sound, lots of left-right action going on here. But you know, the fact that these aren't the same volume, it doesn't necessarily bother me. Just because it sounded good like that in the project. Right now I don't really want to change anything about it, but that could change in 10 minutes. I don't know. So let's see what's going on here. I forget. And then high passes out. All right, high passes out. Ha. All right, so what's this one? Right, so we could probably push this guy up a little bit more too. Let's do a decibel. Let's do half a decibel. It seemed a little hot. Mm-hmm.
Something like that.
So that's it sounds good and I can hear it, but it's not on top of everything else. So let's just say if I turn all this stuff off and just keep the groove on, you'll kind of be able to hear, like it'll be like an acoustic illusion, if you will, where the bass should sit, right? So let's see.
Something like that.
Right, so you want everything else that we took out to sit on top of that, you know? And one thing I'll do, especially in the creative process, is that I'll turn off, say if it's like a dubstep song, I'll turn off all my basses, and it's just effects, sub, kick, you know, everything but the sound design shit. And if I can't groove that naked beat, basically, with no basses, no sound, if I can't groove just the drum track with the subs and the effects, like it's not a groove, it's not done to me, you know? So if I can turn the basses off and still jam as hard as with whether the basses are you can hear them or not, that's generally how I judge if the groove is there, you know? If I can turn everything off and still just like, ooh, damn, it's hard, you know? And you'll know when that strikes, you know? It's just not gonna sound right. You know, and that same thing is like turning your monitors, or when you're mixing, turning it down. It's just a more conservative way to mix, I think. So everything else we want to sit on top of that. So all this stuff right here. Right, and that's mixing with these two right here. So yeah, these are really quiet for some reason. I don't know why, but I'm actually just gonna. Yeah, just that one is bothering me. The other one's a little bit too quiet for my taste too. But again, not really looking at numbers right here. I kind of just get it to where it fits in with everything else. Like you hear how much louder that one is. So let's turn this one back down just a hair. And then right where the LFO tool kicks in, it gets really quiet again. So we're gonna boost that just a hair. Right, so if we click out of it, it looks a little bit more flat than it did before, right? It's not doing this little dip thing. It's a little bit more even, consistently throughout. So let's look at these. Right, so when the LFO tool kicks in, we want to just boost that just a little bit, so it sounds like it's just going, you know, as opposed to, you know, ding. But like I said, with the LFO tool, if you're using that, especially in just like a more of a, just an actual LFO, not side chaining or anything like that, it's going to decrease the volume. You know what I mean? You saw how different it was, right? So just, again, you could fix that in the premix, or you can fix that here. Regardless, as long as you're mindful of it, that's what's important. Yeah, so that one looks good. I might have adjusted the volume in the project. Yeah, so that one's super, super quiet. I don't know why, but this is why you do this. You know, it would be very difficult to achieve this exactly the way I wanted to without being able to see this audio, you know. So, and then it looks like same thing happens right here. I think we could probably boost that just a hair. Fades out. So I'm kind of having trouble seeing how tall these waveforms really need to be. So here's what I'm going to do. Do what I was talking about earlier. Lining up your bottom there. So pretty much all of these could come up, it looks like. Yeah, so let's 00 here and just start pushing it maybe to where it matches something more like this. That one's super quiet. So yeah, there's a big stop right there, so I'm just gonna go ahead and cut it off. So yeah, this kind of cuts out to me a little much, so I'm gonna turn this one down, and I'm actually gonna boost the guys after it. Bam, and push that a little bit. Yeah, that still kind of sticks out a little bit to me. Probably push this just a hair. So that one's really low. You can, I mean, I haven't even heard it. We're just gonna be proactive here. And then, yeah, so like that sounds fine to me, but yeah, so what I'm gonna do here is, since those two sounds kind of fade together, I'm actually just gonna crossfade these two clips right here. That way the volume difference is only for this part, right? And then gonna push. Yeah. All right. Well, this one took a lot longer to explain than I had anticipated. So I'm gonna keep doing this project next week. I'm probably gonna finish the mix and master, but I'll save this as a new project and just keep going on it, and kind of help explain what I did right here. But so today, really we just kind of talked about gain staging. All that really means is just getting levels that aren't correct, right? And I like to do that with a whatchamacallit? I like to do it with like a visual reference, like how I had the subs right next to each other. So like this is easy, right? I made sure that the sub was hitting the same level pretty much the entire time. But a lot of the times, you'll see it ducking to sidechain, or you know what I mean. I'll show you another project here in a second, but it's just not. This isn't like the best example of gain staging the sub channel, for example, because it's already pretty solid for the most part. Maybe some adjustments with these little bass drops here. Right.
I like you.
Right, just a little on the volume. I don't know. Yeah, it's all personal choice. Don't hate me for how I mix. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and just save this for now. So this is like episode 1 of the mixing and mastering. I'm gonna keep going with it next week, and then probably the week after that, we'll keep going on that house project that I pulled up for the other live stream. So here, this is another project along with this one that I'm currently in the mastering process of. And this one had a way better example of how uneven the subs were. So let's just pull this guy over. Look at that. Look at that. So this is a prime example of kind of how not to do your volume with your sub. this is not how I would recommend to any of my students nor any other of my producer homies, making it look like this, because of some effects you're using. Generally, I've always found that just doing the volume, or get it to where it sounds good while you're making it, but don't sit there and try to make it done in the project you're not even going to finish it in. This is the project you're going to finish it in. This is the project that you're going to be paying attention to those details, right? So what I did with this, I was working on this before I hopped on the stream, but what I did with this is exactly what I did in the last project. I went through, found the really quiet part. Look, I even cut out all of the silent part between the drums and everything. Every time, I do this every time, because this silence right here will pick up on your master chain as a slight, almost like a tape hiss, just right. And if you have 10, 15 tracks making a really, really negative 60 dB hiss, that's going to add up. That's going to add up. The compressor's pulling that volume up. Things will lose transients. They'll lose certain timbres and all that. So when I went through and did all the subs, right, now you can see, it was easy to do these. But regardless, they weren't the same. And sometimes you may need to go and do surgery and actually cut out one single thing or one little hit or something if you feel like you need to. But this is, I haven't really done anything, but it's the exact same setup. Camel Crusher, API 2500 on return tracks, and we're pretty much just running those in parallel, adjusting those with the faders, or basically faders, whatever you want to call them. Volume knobs, faders, return knobs, whatever. Doesn't matter, as long as you understand the concept of it. So I kind of hit a wall. I think that's probably a good place to stop. I really have to pee also. So I think I'm going to go do that and head home and play some Rocket League. I'm here at Dub Academy pretty much every single day. But Mondays and Wednesdays, I'm doing classes. If you're interested in taking music theory, if you're interested in learning sound design, if you're interested in learning mixing and mastering, man, give us a call. I want to help anyone that wants to be helped. It's hard for me to connect with someone who doesn't want to be there, right? Was anyone ever in marching band or anything, and they were only in band because they had to do it, or they were only because they had to do some elective or something? I'm too old for that. I don't have to deal with people like that. I don't, there's no reason to. So part of getting better at producing is falling in love with it. I think I was talking to a student we had in here earlier, and I was saying it's really, really difficult to get good at producing or writing music if you're not crazy about it. If you're not absolutely in love with it, it's very difficult to get off of that first, creative, or get over the first creative hump, whether it's staring at a blank Ableton screen, you don't know what you're looking at, or anything in between, someone who's a beginner and where I'm at now. I've been just as passionate about it, music always in my life, but making a career out of being a producer, you really have to let it swallow you, and not in a bad way. It's just, if you want this to be your life, you have to structure your life to do that. You know what I mean? And you have to structure your life around this thing. So when you're staying up all night working on music, or you take a gig that maybe you shouldn't take, or whatever it ends up being, all of that is working towards your consistency as a musician, as a business person, and as a producer, right? So this is kind of the next step. I think if you're hitting walls and you made the project, it's all MIDI, all audio, looking good, automation's clean, but your mix just isn't there, or you need somebody to mix your stuff down, or you're just curious about how it works, go and brush up on this on this process, and like I said, there'll be a second edition next week where we actually, I'll try to stay a little bit longer and actually finish this one. But don't be discouraged by if you don't have an API 2500 plugin, or you don't have Camel Crusher. There's thousands of other plugins that add tube distortion. That's all I'm doing, is just adding tube distortion here. So you can use saturator, any kind of distortion tool, but you really want it to be like soft, light distortion, so it doesn't have to be Camel Crusher, it doesn't have to be API, but you want to go for this brick wall setting to mix in with the uncompressed setting. And I'm probably going to break this video down into a couple more just like bite-sized things. But regardless, when you're making your creative project, when you're writing the music, keep this format in mind. Just don't just be like, oh, I got to get it perfect here. If your sub's too loud, or you can do an EQ sweep in the mixdown. You can add reverb in the mixdown. Don't get caught up on just trying to make it perfect in the project, because this is the project where you're going to make it perfect. It's not going to be. It's rarely going to be, exactly what it is coming out of the creative, or the creative process, or the creative project where you're writing the music. So if you want to start worrying about perfection and be a perfectionist, and start focusing on a higher level of concern to get your track sounding good, these are the questions you need to be asking. You need to be stepping away from your MIDI project, stepping away from the 100 tracks stacked on top of each other, and think of it as just like an audio. And it's just you're done writing the song, and it's time to just make it pop. Stemming it out all to audio. I mean, this is how major mastering engineers and stuff, they all mix in audio. It's all audio. This is a pretty standard practice, I think, when it comes to mixing something down. Having it all in audio and having that visual reference of where your levels are at, and how loud something is compared to something else. It's just a complete game changer for me. So yeah, man, shoot me a follow on Twitter. It's been flashing. I don't know. It's on that side. Okay, the camera's backwards. Yeah. So it's flashing. Give Dub Academy at Dub Academy, I think, across all socials. At Madhatter _music with the musics with an X, pretty much across the board. Like I said, I'm gonna be doing this every week. So if y'all have questions, man, shoot me an email, madhatter.official@gmail. COVID times are hard. Anybody could use a donation, some support. PayPal is the same email, whatever. I want to help people who want to be helped. You know what I mean? I'm putting all this content out there for free because I'm trying to stimulate the Austin creative community. I want people to understand that they can do pretty much anything that they want on their own. And you don't necessarily need anyone just standing over your shoulder to do that. It's really up to you. And I tell all my students that, I tell my friends that it's just a good way to live. If you want something, you need to do what you need to do to go and get it if you want it that bad. So I'm going to save that point for next week. Appreciate you guys. I don't know. I didn't even get to look at the chat or anything. I was pretty wrapped up in this. But if y'all have any questions, shoot me a DM on all the socials, email, whatever. Give Dub Academy a follow. Come stop by the studio sometime. We'd love to have you and show you around. But until then, I will see you guys next week when we do this again. Peace.